What's going on YouTube? What's going on Facebook? Welcome back to the channel. If you guys happen to be watching this live, thank you so much for tuning in. If you guys are watching this offline, don't forget to hit like and subscribe and all, sharing all that fun stuff. As usual, we're going to give everybody a few minutes to jump on here, so you guys hang tight. We'll kind of get into it here in just a few minutes. Yeah, it typically takes 2 to 3 minutes, so if you're watching this offline, you might want to jump forward a little bit. A little warm today. A little bit, slight breeze. About, I don't know, feels like it's probably about 70 degrees outside, 72, somewhere in there. I could be wrong. What's going on, Nicholas? Thanks for jumping on, buddy. Starting to get a few more people in now. Having some technical difficulties here with my setup, so I may have to make some changes here and there. I don't know exactly what I'm gonna have to do to make this thing act right, so you guys bear with me this morning. Normally I don't have these kind of problems. Right. I don't know what's going on with this thing today. I have a system that's supposed to hold this thing up, and it's not doing it. So let's try a different angle here. Well, I'm batting a million right now. Oh man, what is up with this thing? Just don't get it. There is that gonna do it? Maybe. Let's try that one more setting down. So if this thing whip snaps you guys into the floor, man, I apologize, but it may happen. All right, let's see if we can move you guys a little bit closer. And there it goes. Oh, my Saturday morning is going excellent so far. Never had this problem out of this thing. I don't know what the real problem is here. So let's try another angle. Let's see what happens. Maybe that's the solution right there. Hey, all right. Whew. All right, how's everybody Saturday morning? Looks like we're set up pretty good now. The house next door is being renovated, so they're doing some work over there. So you see all that stuff going on, that's why. Well, as most of you guys know, JJ Hollomon no longer with the team. I made a video on that yesterday. I'm gonna kind of get into it a little more here today, what that means for the university, what that means for the receiving corps. It's not as bad as you might think. I mean, we would definitely like to see Hollomon play if he were not a complete knucklehead. But at the same time, if that's how you're going to behave, we will give you a free bus ticket to anywhere but University of Georgia. I don't condone that behavior. I don't believe in it. Well, you can't act right, go somewhere else, man. I mean, UGA has never been a school that's really tolerated much. I mean, there were several people that in the Mark Richt days really felt like Mark Richt was a little too hard on some of the guys for some of the behavior that they had. Kirby Smart seems to be a little more lenient about some things, and I think this was the first real test of Kirby Smart's staff's character. To me, whenever this kind of popped up, obviously they have to conduct an investigation. I don't think anybody knew about it. I certainly didn't know about it, and I pretty much keep my ear right to the grindstone. Bryson Kearney says, man, I think they should have just suspended Hollomon for a while and not kick him off. I feel they should have gave him a second chance, see how bad he wants to play, how he wants to, and see if he can learn from it. Well, Bryson, I mean, there's going to be a lot of people that's going to take that side. There really is. My point of view is this. I have a daughter. And if anybody were to put their hands on her for any reason, I could not, I could not tolerate that. I could not forgive that. I would never, never put up with that. I think it was the right choice. I think it was the smart thing to do. I think that it also sets a staple of, it sets a precedent that if you're going to play at the University of Georgia, you're gonna represent the University of Georgia well. And if not, then you got to go. Well, it's true. I mean, I understand that you may, a lot of people say, well, you don't know what the woman did and all this other stuff, and that's fine. I can understand that. But I'll be honest with you, I'm not one of those people that think that there's something a woman can do to make a man hit her. To me, it's really, really hard to say, well, she deserved it, or well, she was asking for it. Now, while there may be cases that may be some type of legitimate justification, J.J. Holloman's not no tiny guy. J.J. Holloman's a hoss. And I find it highly unlikely that this female was anywhere near the size that he was. Now, I'm not a tiny guy, thus the name Big Dog Brett. I'm 6 foot and 280 pounds. I'm a big boy. But anytime I've ever had an interaction with someone of the female persuasion that I thought was going to turn south, even at a young age, I'd walk away. I certainly didn't put stitches in anybody's head. So to me, that whole thing is, well, he's a young kid. Well, I was a young kid too, and there's plenty of other young kids out there walking around that don't do this stuff. You cannot let your emotions get the best of you. Nobody owes you anything. If anything, you owe the university and the fan base more than that. You owe it to the people around you that have worked so very hard to get you to the University of Georgia, to put you in a position where you could become an NFL star, or at least an NFL player. Did he make a mistake? Yes, he made a mistake. Is it an unforgivable mistake? Maybe not unforgivable, but at the end of the day, you can't represent an entire university with that kind of behavior whenever you're supposed to be one of the star returning players. It's not going to work out for you. Hats off to Kirby, hats off to the coaching staff for making that decision. They conducted the investigation. I don't know if Holloman admitted to it. I've heard rumors that he did admit to it. I've heard rumors that she instigated it. I've heard all kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, man, you just can't put your hands on a woman. Now, if it had been him fist fighting with another player or another student, or something along that lines, and it wasn't a girl, I'd have said, okay, we need to have a conversation. We need to talk about anger management. We need to find out what the root cause was here. But I don't know if it's a Southern thing. I've lived all over the U.S., and I'm going to tell you, it doesn't seem to be a Southern thing. It seems to be that most people on a whole find it very, very difficult to justify any type of altercation with a female for whatever reason. I think that's because I've always been taught that I was a protector. I'm not saying that anybody should be okay with it. If you want my opinion on what I think should happen to J.J. Holloman, I'm not saying he should never play football. What's going on, Jermaine? What I'm saying is that, what's going on, Freddie Gee? What I'm saying is that J.J. Holloman obviously needs to be punished. I don't think kicking him off the team is just enough. I think that what needs to happen is he needs to go play JUCO for a year. He needs to understand that he absolutely squandered an opportunity that sat in front of him. And I think at that time, his behavior needs to be reassessed. I don't think his talent should be placed above his character. I think that just because you're an extremely talented player does not mean that you can act any old way you want to act. I meant it's pronounced Freddie G. Oh, Freddie G, my bad. I think that's the way it ought to go. I think that if you're in a position, and out of the millions and millions and millions of people that watch college football, 99.9% of us have never played college ball, will never play college ball, will certainly never have an opportunity to play NFL, even though some of us think that's what we'd like to do. And here you are, an athlete representing the University of Georgia, representing the dreams of kids everywhere across the United States that play football, that want to go on to become NFL stars, and you throw it away because you can't walk away. You can't put your hands in your pocket. You can't use words. You can't call campus police. You can't separate yourself from that. You can't realize that that is an obstacle in front of you on your way to greatness. It's hard to me to be very forgiving for that. Now, if it had been an incident where he'd have been outside and 3 or 4 girls jumped him for whatever reason, and then he had to fight them off, hey, that's a different story. I'm not saying stand there and get your tail kicked, but when you big as he is, and this one-on-one and this female, you got to walk away. And I don't see any other solution than that. And the further that we go into this whole thing about J.J. Hollomon being gone, and there's people that's going to defend him, and that's fine. You certainly feel free to do so. But to me, if that was my daughter, I'd be thoroughly upset. Question, I understand what's going on with JJ, but honestly, do we truly have the facts on the situation? We all praise JJ, but I want everyone to look at it from the outside. Nice weather in Georgia. It's storming here in Nashville, but back to the subject. Other is the XFL. All right, so let me kind of answer Jermaine here. So whenever a situation like this happens, it creates an entire chain of problem. Now, whether or not J.J. Hollomon accidentally bumped into this girl, she fell over and she split her head open, whatever happened, that's almost irrelevant. I'm sure there was an investigation done. And you can be sure that the university, any university, not just University of Georgia, any university was looking for any out that they could take and still have a respectful perception from the general public. There's no way university wanted to walk up, get rid of J.J. Hollomon, have this blow up in their face, and no. There had to be enough information there that the University of Georgia looked at it and said, there is no way that we can make this look credible. There's no way we can make this look plausible, that this was not what it is. It's going to create a PR problem, and a big enough PR problem that our only and best choice is to get rid of him. I mean, it had to be tough. They had a choice and they took the easy choice. People need to stop saying they had no choice. Yes, they did. Okay, fair enough. They did have a choice. I don't think getting rid of a guy like J.J. Hollomon was an easy choice. Let's say that they kept him. This investigation still would have come out. The information still would have came out. And then you would have had a fan base that was trying that, first of all, not just our fan base, you would have had other fan bases that would have said, hey, Georgia's got a team full of wife beaters. Georgia's got a team full of guys that beat up on girls. That stuff never would have stopped. I mean, that would have continued on. That's how bad that perception of that particular type of action is. I'll read about Joe Mixon. I'm assuming that Joe Mixon was in a similar situation. But I'm just going off of the information I have. Yeah, and I think Artie's right. I think they did have a choice, but I think they made the right choice. I think at the end of the day, there had to be some profound information there for them to get him off the team. And if that's the case, I mean, there was probably multiple witnesses to what happened. And it wasn't just that, and I'm not condoning this behavior at all. It wasn't that he just slapped this girl. Apparently he slapped her, choked her, and somehow her head ended up with 6 stitches. That's a lot, man. 6 stitches is a lot. That's not a little cut. That's a wound. That's a lot. But so that to the side, we understand what has happened. You know, all of the we shoulda, we coulda, we woulda, this, that, and the other about J.J. Hollomon is now gone. It's all in the past. So we've got to find out what's the next step. Can we put our foot forward? What is the next opportunity? Because I guarantee you that conversation was had before they ever got rid of J.J. Hollomon. They had to have a conversation of, well, he's gone. What are we going to do now? So J.J. Hollomon is a thing of the past. Somebody's got to fill that position. Well, I think it's going to be Demetrius Robertson. I think Demetrius Robertson has probably been playing in a position kind of back up, and from what Kirby Smart was saying, he's not a good enough blocker downfield. I think this now puts Georgia in a position where they have to play some players that may not be great at blocking downfield, which is fine. I've kind of been an advocate for if it's an obvious passing situation, nobody's confused that you're going to pass the ball. Put a guy in there that's got some speed. Put a guy in there that can catch. Make them stop it. And if they can't, then what are you worried about him blocking downfield for if he's the guy catching the ball? To me, that's clearly been an oversight on coaching, but that's me armchair quarterback coaching. You got D-Rob who can go out there and catch. By the way, for those of you who don't know, you keep hearing a lot of us fans talk about D-Rob. One of the reasons that us diehard fans talk about D-Rob is because D-Rob runs a 4.35 40. That is NFL speed all day, every day. There's only about 2 guys, maybe 3 guys in the SEC that can catch him. And I believe both of those play for Auburn. You have to have blazing fast speed. Number one, if you have a wide receiver who is very fast and you have a cornerback who is just fast, you're going to get eaten alive. A cornerback has to be almost as fast as that receiver and be able to deal with the jump cuts, guys going out on wheel routes and just walking out and getting 2 or 3 steps. When you're 4.35, when you can run 4.35, you got to be able to have an opportunity to catch a ball. I think that's one of the reasons that we've got James Coley in place now. You're going to see Jake Fromm throw the ball around more. He's going to have to. I don't think none of the elite teams are really fooled about running the ball. They have good defensive lines. Auburn's obviously going to have a good defensive line this year, probably one of the top 10 in the nation. Alabama's going to have a top 10. So, if we play, and we're going to have to play Auburn, probably going to have to play Alabama, and then we're going to have to turn around and play Freddie G says, come up here for the Vandy game. I may. We'll see. Whenever you've got a guy that is changing an offensive coordination, does it say DSGB27 says thought JJ was smarter than this? Our best freaking wide receiver is gone. He may be, but you know what? It's next man up, and it's always going to be next man up. We lost a lot of guys from our receiving core. We're just going to have to deal with it. Just going to have to move on and pick up the pieces where we can, give some of these other guys an opportunity to step in and catch a ball. You got D-Rob, you've got George Pickens, you've got, oh, and by the way, for those of you who don't know, we just had another guy sign last night. He's a 3-star, but he's an athlete. He is, this guy's a phenom. When I say speed, right now in college football, there's only about 4 guys that are faster than him in all of football. Well, D-Rob's got a lot of experience too. We just got to get him in the game. Mr. Wren. If you guys don't know who Wren is, go look him up. Go look on 27 Sports commits, UGA commits. He's our most recent commit. He committed yesterday late in the evening. This guy is set, and he's out of the state of Louisiana, by the way. And he couldn't stop talking about how good our wide receivers coach is, even though this guy's traditionally not a wide receiver. He's traditionally a split back, which a lot of you guys may not even know what that is. So I'm not going to get into what a split back is. But if you have a split back with that kind of speed, man, it's hard to stop him. And UGA's got a heck of an offensive line. Now, he's not big. He's really not big at all. He's like, I want to say he's 5'9" or 5'10", 180 pounds, but he's lightning in a bottle. He runs the 100-meter dash in 10.4. That's basically Olympic speed. And there's only about 4 guys in all of college football that are that fast. Incredibly fast player. He traditionally doesn't play wide receiver, but if you can put this guy in the mix at tailback, even at the tight end position, if you put this guy at a slot receiver, he really has the opportunity to create a unique dynamic for Georgia. But that's a couple years down the road. We'll see him eventually. D-Rob's picking Simmons, Blaylock, Landers, and Carius Jackson. I think there's 1 or 2 more in there. I think the biggest reason that our wide receivers really weren't getting the hang on one second, guys. 1 second. I think one of the reason, and Wimbush, that's the one I was thinking about. I think one of the reasons that our wide receivers weren't getting as much attention as they should be getting is because they weren't getting targeted as much as they should be targeted. We're a run-heavy team, which is fine. You need to be able to line up and run the ball down people's throats. If you're going to be Georgia football, we're running back you. We like to run over people, and that's awesome. But you got to be able to throw the ball. Clemson was able to throw the ball. Alabama was able to throw the ball. Georgia's got to be able to throw the ball. And if you go back and look at the stats, hey Tram, if you go back and look at the stats, you'll see that Georgia, anytime it had to lean on Jake Fromm to win the game, it did not happen. And Jake Fromm is a phenom quarterback, and there's some people that have him in the Heisman race. Something's got to change desperately for Jake Fromm to be a Heisman winner. Just does. Jake Fromm is a great quarterback. Jake Fromm is excellent. You can't shake the guy up. You can put him in any situation, and he's cool as a cucumber. But when that guy's having a bad game, that guy's having a bad game. I mean, the fall off is dramatic. We do have Carson Beck coming up. That guy's going to be a great quarterback. We got DeJuan Mathis. That guy's going to be a great quarterback. We've got a ton of talent at quarterback position, and that's fine. But Jake Fromm has to be able to develop a football game where he commands the offense with his arm. Any quarterback, and I do mean any quarterback, can hand the ball off to DeAndre Swift and probably win 90% of the games they play. Jake Fromm is Steph Curry, and they need him to be Klay Thompson. You know, that's probably fairly accurate. Jake Fromm is an outstanding quarterback. I mean, the guy can make some amazing passes. But at the end of the day, he's got to be able to make the defense completely forget about Georgia's run game. He's got to make the defenses absolutely respect everything he can do with his arm. He has to be able to be a deep ball threat. He has to be able to find receivers open in the flat. He's got to be able to do those things above and beyond what he has done so far. Is that asking a lot? Yes. But if you want to win a national championship, we're asking a lot. Yeah, Jake Fromm is way off when he's having a bad game. There's no doubt about that. He misses players by a landslide. He underthrows them, overthrows them. If he's just out of it, he's just out of it. So, now that being said, one of the other things I wanted to point out is that I think that DeAndre Swift he has a #1 offensive line in the SEC, and that will help Alabama's offensive line is ranked #2. We do have a great offensive line, and they give him a lot of time to throw the balls, but he's got to be faster at what he does. One of the things that I used to like about Aaron Murray and Matt Stafford is that Georgia would be way behind the sticks. Granted, we don't get that way often now, but we get way behind the sticks. And then you'd see a fake handoff to Noshawn Marino or whomever, and then you would see a football go 40 yards down the field, and it was just a strike, just boom. And you could hear the other team just groan, like, "Oh God, we thought we had them. Now we're way down here at first down," and it was just a morale killer for the other team. Georgia really doesn't do a whole lot of that anymore. The big explosive plays that we tend to see either tend to be on defense, or you get DeAndre Swift bust loose for a 20 or 30-yard run. I want to see some of those amazing passes that we used to see. I don't want to see us run the ball 85% of the time on first down. And I want to see some of those receivers get out there and make some impressive catches. I think that was one of the things that kind of hurt us during the Notre Dame game, is that we were trying to run the ball, and Notre Dame was able to kind of slow that down. We were picking up yards, but it wasn't big cuts. It wasn't big chunks. It was, 6, 7 here, 6, 7 there, 2 here, 7, 8 there. And that moved us down the field steadily. 2-minute drill, Fromm is the best. He may be in a 2-minute drill, but I want to see the ability to, okay, let me put it to this way. Let's say that Georgia's behind 4 or 5 points at a half. Doesn't happen often, but it does happen. If Georgia comes out there in the first or second play after the kickoff, Georgia puts a dagger in the heart of whoever we're playing, and we're now at the 20-yard line off of one pass. I mean, that kind of stuff can change the momentum of a game greatly. When you know that quarterback, like Trevor Lawrence, he forces you to have to respect that pass every time he snaps the ball. Those corners and those safeties have to back up. They have to. That's definitely going to help the running game. But the moment that those guys step forward to try to stop the run game and Jake Fromm can burn them over the top, that is almost an unstoppable offense. It's what Notre Dame does. Not Notre Dame. That's what Clemson does with Travis Etienne. They've got NFL receivers. There's no doubt in my mind. But Travis Etienne, he's a straight line runner. They've got a good offensive line, and they can create a hole for him. This guy goes downfield in a hurry and gets more yards really than he should, because Trevor Lawrence is able to make you scared of his arm. Now that puts us back kind of in the talk of who's going to win the Heisman. Trevor Lawrence, front runner. Tua, probably second. There's places that's got Jake Fromm listed as third. I think that's a little high unless something dramatic changes. Maybe it will. And then way down the list at like number 25, you've got DeAndre Swift. If we turn on the passing game with our run game, who's stopping us? The only team that's got a shot, I'd have to say, would be Clemson. Now, there's a lot of Alabama fans that watch this channel, and obviously I'm a Georgia fan. But if Georgia has played Alabama as closely as we have played them, missing that piece of our passing game, I think it'd be a pretty reasonable statement to say I think Georgia could overtake Alabama in that aspect. Now, I just do. Tua Tagovailoa is a great quarterback. Is he a Trevor Lawrence? No. Is Jake Fromm? No. And I don't know any other quarterback right now that is. That guy could go NFL today. If he put out right now that he was dropping out of high school or dropping out of college, and he wants to go play pro, there'd be 15 or 20 NFL talent scouts standing at his doorstep. Looks like Uncle Lou's doing a Notre Dame Virginia game. If you guys want to watch that, a simulation he does. He does the NCAA 2014 game. I think he plays on Xbox. And he sets the simulations up with current rosters. He downloads them from some forum that he knows, and he lets them run. It's interesting to watch. I watched the Georgia-Tennessee game on that, and I was not impressed. I didn't think it was even close. But anyway, I think Alabama only has a couple of games that could be a problem for them. Those Sims are bad. They are bad. They're really bad. I think Alabama has a couple of games I think Alabama has more games that could potentially trip them up than Georgia has games that could trip them up. I think that Georgia has to be able to beat Florida, which I don't foresee being a real problem. We need to beat Auburn. We need to beat them. Don't necessarily have to get to the SEC championship. Of course, we want to win every SEC game we played. Georgia just has 2. Artie's going to say Florida and Auburn, I bet. Biggest threat in the East. we beat Auburn, we'll be undefeated. Yeah, Auburn's got a good team. We'll just see how they play. I'm with John. I was like, I don't really think Florida, Texas A&M. I don't think we really have a team in the East that's going to be a problem. The biggest hurdle that I think Georgia had, and Artie's right, is I think it's Texas A&M. I don't think Florida. I think Texas A&M is going to be a problem. They played LSU to the wire. I think the score of that game was like 78 to 72 or something absolutely ridiculous, like 37 overtimes or something. It was intense. So I think that's certainly a possibility. But I think we get Texas A&M at home this year. That's a great benefit. Nah, man, Murray State's a problem. Oh man, Murray State. I'm actually kind of interested to see what's going to happen with Oregon. I want to watch that first game of the season. I want to see what's going to happen with Ohio State. I want to see how Clemson plays. And believe it or not, Auburn has a D line. We should handle him. TAMU is at home, so yeah, Jordan O'Hare. Yeah, I'm with you on that. I'm not going to overlook Notre Dame. I think Georgia's going to curb stomp Notre Dame. I think they've taken a step back, even though they think they've taken a step forward. I think Georgia's going to be able to handle that game pretty well. I think it'll be a 2-score game. I don't think it'll be a 3 or 4-score game, and that's just based off of the fact that Notre Dame is supposedly going to have a good defensive line, but they say that every year about them, and they ended up getting mollywopped by everybody when they get to the playoffs. What was I going to say? Lost my train of thought. It'll be hard for any team to beat us in Alabama for the unforeseeable future. Oh, in Athens, yes. I think the fan base is supercharged now. I think the fans feel, even the diehard fans always feel like, yeah, this is our year, you know. And then you start getting some of the other fan base to go, yeah, we can win this one. And then I think now we're to the point where we're like, man, we are on the cusp. We got to be there. We got to be there. So I'm a little concerned about how much time that Clemson has now had to get all of their guys roided up in the offseason. So I'm interested to see how those first couple of games go. Oh, man. Well, I think we're about to the halfway mark. If you guys would give me a thumbs up, I appreciate it. It helps the channel. It looks good, and it makes me feel good, and all that other wonderful stuff. We haven't lost an SEC game, East game in 3 years. If Kirby Smart can run the table in the SEC East, it'll be the first time anybody has ever been able to run their division 3 years in a row or 4 years in a row, whatever it is. I hate that stuff disappears if I get a chance to read it. Alabama's not taking T&M lightly. Georgia's not. I promise you they're not. You've seen the Georgia versus Notre Dame game. You didn't. No, I have not seen that game, Jermaine, but I'll go back and find it. TAMU is the best roster we will face in the regular season, but I think Auburn at home will be harder of the two because of the atmosphere. So I've kind of been thinking about that. The fact that we're playing in Jordan O'Hare Stadium is a bit of a concern. The reason it's a concern is because Kirby Smart does not have the greatest track record in the world playing on the road against the SEC. I really, really think that is almost a misnomer. I think it just happens to be a coincidence. And I could be wrong. I think that at the end of the season, you're going to see that Georgia finally was able to go through and win on the West. If Alabama makes it through to the SEC championship game, we should be able to beat them. Aunt Lou. Oh, man. Still can't watch the SEC championship game from last year. Man, what you talking about? I had post-traumatic stress disorder from the national championship loss we took. What are you talking about? Hate to be the bearer of bad news, but you ain't running the East this year, especially with your experience situation. I think that we could run the East if all we do is snap the ball and hand it off to the running backs. I really do. That offensive line is beastly. I don't see anybody in the East that can stop it. Certainly not Florida. And Georgia's got an amazing defensive line. I think our secondary and our defense is the only problem we have. But, I mean, you can't pass the ball every down. That ain't going to work. So, I mean, those wide receivers can only run so many go routes. O-line and loaded at running back, strong defense, no one in the East will hang. I think depth is going to be a problem for a lot of positions. I keep telling people this, but there's 24 5-star recruits, 24 5-star recruits, players in all of the SEC East. 22 of them belong to UGA. That's a problem if you're playing UGA. It just is. I've been very fortunate that I happen to have come from a place and loved a football team that has done as well as they have done over the years. One of the things I do want to point out, and from time to time, I have some Texas fans that have subscribed to the channel. This year, it's going to be in the Big 10 or Big 12, the Big 12, which has only got I think 8 teams in it now. And no, I'm not counting Baylor, and I'm not counting Kansas. Thinking about going to the Georgia Vandy game. That's a whooping right there. Our O-line and secondary is going to be nasty. I think the interior of the defensive line is probably going to be our biggest weakness, but that defensive line is big. Ooh, looks like we got a little bit of cloud cover rolling in here. It was a little sunny a while ago. Looks like it's cooling down. I'm fine with that. Who do you guys think Georgia's going to be playing in the SEC championship, provided Georgia makes it there? I'll put that caveat in for Artie. And we'll discuss that. Dwayne, how did I know you was going to say Alabama? Hot almighty. So while I'm waiting to get some more answers in here, one of the things I've noticed is on some of my older videos, Bama don't trust lose offense yet. Troll, Alabama, LSU. I think LSU certainly has an opportunity. I think this is a team that I think have a possibility to win. And that's going to be Alabama, no specific order, Alabama, Texas A&M, LSU, and Auburn with an outside shot. I think that if Auburn can sneak past Texas A&M and they sneak past LSU, but they lose to Alabama, let's just say they lose to Alabama, and you can turn those any which way you want to turn them, and then if Alabama loses 2 games, any one of those other teams could get in. So it's really interesting. The SEC West this year is looking pretty strong. I think the gap between Alabama and the rest of the teams has closed a little bit. It's not as big as it used to be, especially with Texas A&M coming up like they are. But I still think there's a gap between them. I think the gap between Georgia and anybody else in the East is pretty substantial. I think that gap is bigger than in the East between Georgia and the next team than it is for Alabama and whoever's closest to them. I'll be honest with you, I would not want to play Alabama, LSU, Texas A&M, and Auburn all in the same season. I wouldn't want to do that if I didn't have to. So if Georgia makes it to the SEC championship and we beat whoever it is, I think that you're probably going to see, you're probably going to see Georgia, Clemson, Alabama, and/or Oklahoma. You may see Texas A&M if things work out just right for them. Alabama has to take a step back at some point. What's up, Alfonso? I think Georgia may have to take a step back. I think Alabama may have to take a step back at some point. That's true. But I think that this offense that they're going to have this year is probably one of the best offenses they've had in a number of years. So it's going to be really interesting. It's like Mr. Wren said when he signed up with Georgia. Iron sharpens iron. I think that Georgia has been forced to get better to try to beat Alabama. I think Alabama's forced itself to push itself to be better because it's playing a national championships game, seems like every other year. Georgia knows they've got to play Alabama, so they've got to get better. Clemson knows that they're playing for championships every other year. They've got to get better. So you get this mentality of we can't do the same old thing we've always been doing. We got to get better and better and better and better. Other teams will most likely step up before they step back. I agree with that. Georgia and Clemson exposed Tua. To a point, one of the biggest disappointments for me is that how well we handled Tua, and then they turn around and put in Jalen Hurts, and we couldn't stop him. And we had completely shut him down the year before. It just blew my mind. What are the odds Ringo commits before the season? Also, does it appear to you that we are losing Eric Gilbert? I don't think we're losing Gilbert. Gilbert has said many, many times that he is a dog all the way through and through. I think that since he's put that out there, he's stepped back. He has stepped back, and he just kind of don't care anymore about the drama that's going. He's not going to continue to reassert himself hundreds of times. Now, is it smart for him to go take his visits? Absolutely. That may be the best thing that he can do. Ringo, honestly, I haven't done a whole lot of looking into that guy. I will after the video, but it sounds like I missed the boat on that guy. Hey, what's up, Zimmer? I think that's your first comment. No, it's not. No, it's not. It's like your second. So, my neck hurts, man. There it is. I knew Tiger was going to throw it out at some point. Be careful how much salt you put out there, Tiger. They're liable to hand it back to you. Fromm's arm strength is underrated. Yes, his arm strength is underrated, but you have to have a coach that will give him the ability to make the play call to throw downfield when he wants to. And chained to the ground, Chaney was not letting Jake Fromm throw the ball. I mean, when you have stud running backs, I guess the philosophy can be we're going to run it till you stop it, and that's fine. But once somebody stops it, you need to have a quarterback that can throw it. And you need to have plays that allow him to throw it. Chaney didn't have a second idea of what he was doing. Ringo will commit late this year. I think Ringo, was it Ringo? I don't think it was Ringo. Who was that other guy? It was another guy. It was Milton. It might have been Milton. Said he was going to commit in like late July or August or something like that. We'll see what happens. And by the way, I don't have any problem with any of these players that say they're going to go to University of Georgia, taking official visits to other schools. A lot of fans, they worry when these guys take the trip to other schools. I'm not. And the reason I'm not worried is because there have been numerous other 4- and 5-star players that have taken trips to other schools, still pick University of Georgia. If it's a good fit for the player, if the player's comfortable, if it's a good fit for the school, then he's fine. Bruce Huck says JJ is eat up with stupidity. There's a lot of people that would agree with that sentiment, sir. A lot of people. So for me, where in Georgia are you located? You'll be in Comer in 2 weeks. Jonas Jennings and Richard Seymour, a couple of damn good dogs. I'm actually right now currently a little bit south of Atlanta. I'm just out. I'm outside of the outer perimeter, if that makes sense. Milton is a July commit. Ringo said he'd be. Oh, he said okay. So that guy said signing day. I'll have to look into that. Thanks for your information there, John. It's I'm not worried about these other guys going to these other schools. I mean, they may get a flip here and there, but for the most part, Kirby and his staff are the best at flipping players. Some of the best I've ever seen. We're pulling guys out of Florida that we couldn't pull before. We're keeping guys in Georgia that we didn't keep before. I mean, we're even going to LSU. I mean, not LSU. We're going to Louisiana and picking up guys. Hey, what's up, Sarah? There is so many things that are being done better on the recruiting trail that we never did before. And until that stops, until the recruiting stops, we're going to be a contender. Uncle Lou was heated yesterday. And I'll be honest with you, man, I was really heated as well. I saw his video, and I was just as heated as he was, and I wanted to do a video, but I didn't want mine to be the same way. I mean, that's a lot of emotion. It takes a lot of energy too, and I'll be honest with you, when I get that heated, it's really difficult for me to say exactly how I feel. I have to take a minute and take a breath and calm it down so that I can articulate myself properly. Don't worry about Eric Gilbert. He is interested in Tennessee only because they have 2 former teammates there. That is correct. He does have a couple of teammates there. The state house in Florida has a bill on the floor to rename Florida to South Georgia. I believe it, man. All the everybody in favor say aye. Aye. Anybody in favor say nay. The ayes have it. Rename it. Johnny Anthony heard about the bill. I heard the Southeast would be called the country of Georgia. Oh, man. Jerry says Clemson fans keep running their mouth. The only way Clemson beats Alabama is if Bama beats themselves. Maybe. So, I know I got some Clemson fans on here. I'll get into the Mullen conversation here in a second. I know I've got some Clemson fans on here. I think you guys dodged a bullet in immense proportions, because I personally think that with all three of those players testing positive for PEDs, I'm very surprised that not more players were tested. I'm very surprised that whenever the coaching staff came out and said that, they accidentally gave them to them, I'm really, really surprised that kind of went away. I'm surprised that more testing wasn't done and that national title wasn't potentially in jeopardy. That should have made a lot more noise than it did. There was a lot of fans that were very upset about that. I'm surprised that a lot of Alabama fans aren't calling you guys cheaters, but, whatever. Look, Artie says nay. Beat down to Mullen. The Florida man, Lou. I love every time I see Uncle Lou say that. It cracks me up every time. Dan Mullen. Have y'all seen anything about Dan Mullen in the news lately? Have you? I ain't seen nothing. Oh, Artie, you trying to troll me up, man. Trying to troll me up. Dan Mullen is a clown. I think somebody on the athletic director probably told him to calm himself down. He was embarrassing the university. Players jumping ship left and right. I'm not sure Florida's even going to have a football team after the first game of the season. They're going to have to forfeit the rest of the season. It's going to be bad. It's going to be bad. What did somebody else say? He's hiding from the embarrassment. He should. Clemson versus Miami in the ACC championship. That is highly likely because every other team in the ACC sucks. However, I will point something out. You guys have to play Syracuse. Now, is Syracuse a national title contender? No, not at all. Yeah, I need to beat Kentucky and Missouri first. I don't know if Florida's the most overrated team. I think they're right up there with some of the other teams in the Big 12. But anyway, Clemson actually has a really, really strong defense. A really strong defense. Damn null and void. Syracuse has, I think, one of the, they have a defense that's supposedly in the top 10. So I'm interested to watch that game as well. And it seems like traditionally, maybe with the exception of last year, they've actually given Clemson more of a run for their money than Alabama did. Not running down Alabama, I'm just drawing a comparison that I think that one of the few teams that might be able to trip them up and catch them sleeping would be Syracuse. I don't think that Travis Etienne will be able to run through that as well as they did. Yeah, they probably won't be challenged until the playoff. They might have a trap game here and there. Yeah. You get you guys a tissue. You just lost your receiver. You're not embarrassed? No, not at all. I'm not embarrassed. I would be embarrassed if we would have kept the guy. I think the fact that we pulled a Glenn Gary and Glenn Ross and we said the favor is that I'm going to fire your behind. I do. I think Georgia's. I don't think that's the only receiver we had that was a quality receiver. He may be the most experienced, and while I don't want to lose a player like that, I think it certainly gives other players an opportunity to step up and make themselves known. And sometimes, I mean, let's step back. Let's roll the clock back to Jacob Eason and Jake Fromm. I think it was the second or third year. I think it was the second year. Jacob Eason stepped in, blew his knee out, getting hit out of bounds at the Tennessee game. I don't think that reflects the entire Tennessee team. I think that was a bad decision on one player. And Jake Fromm had to step in, and then Jake Fromm took us all the way to the national championship. So I think sometimes the backups are just as good. Boy, Artie. Artie says he's an Auburn fan. Travis is coming from Big Money Alumni. What did I miss? I missed something. So here's what you got, right? So there's people talking about Dabo Swinney replacing Nick Saban. I don't see why he would do that. I really don't. Why would he step into a harder conference? He's making plenty of money. He can write a check. He could send a letter out tomorrow stating that he wanted X amount more money next year. Clemson's going to pay it. They're going to pay him. A fan of multiple teams isn't a true fan. Maybe. I got teams that I pull for that ain't Georgia, but and the only reason I pull for one of these teams is because a good friend of mine is from there, and he's always been that type of fan. So when that team plays, I pull for them, but they're not in the SEC, so it's fine. Crick in my neck reading Artie Bruce. Dabo's family is here in Alabama. They may be, but he's got enough money he can hire a limousine to ride them to and from. Besides, Dabo spends all his time wrapped up in football, traveling all over anyway, so it doesn't matter whether he's in Alabama or Clemson. It's going to be difficult for him to see family either way. So Dabo has spent years building his team the way he wants it in Clemson. He doesn't have a problem getting the players he wants at Clemson. He's proven you don't need a number 1 or number 2 recruiting class to win a national championship. He has the alumni in his pocket. He has a fan base that support him wholeheartedly. He is essentially a god in South Carolina, nearly to the equivalent that Nick Saban is a god in the state of Alabama. Why would he leave? There's no incentive for him to leave Clemson to pick up Alabama's mantle, or to Nick Saban's mantle. He's got his own mantle. He doesn't need one. So I think that the talk that Dabo Swinney would go to Alabama, I don't think there's enough. I don't think he needs the money bad enough for that to be a consideration for him. Something has to happen in Clemson. Very controversial for him to leave. Yeah. Why leave the easy ACC road for the playoffs? That was my next point. Artie says, "See, Brett, you're a good guy." What are you talking about, Artie? Saban's time is coming to an end. So let me talk about the ACC East, or the ACC conference in general. The ACC conference in general is weaker on that side of the fence than, say, the SEC. But I mean, he doesn't have to worry. They don't have to worry about as many trap games. I would argue to a point that that's very similar to what Georgia has to do up until the time when we play in a championship game. Because instead of playing a weak sauce team like Miami, we're probably going to be playing a pretty strong contender in the SEC West. ACC has just been only Clemson. It has. Let me see. Georgia won't lose to Florida for the next 3 to 4 years. Mullen needs time to develop those 3 stars. Mullen is supposed to be some kind of quarterback whisperer. I'm going to enjoy the breeze a second. Feels good. So, there's the thing that I'm looking for out of Nick Saban, honestly, is that his age is kind of catching up with him. Nick Saban is getting up there. He doesn't need this anymore. You start to have health issues. He just had a hip replaced. If you've ever seen a hip replacement, first of all, if you don't know how absolutely archaic and barbaric looking a hip replacement is, go watch a video on that. It looks like a horror movie. It's one of the bloodiest surgeries you'll ever see. It's not make a slice, put in a pin, put in a rod, and call it a day. Well, you think about it. I mean, look at how much interaction he has to have running up and down these sidelines, climbing up and down these stairs, bleachers, going all these practice, standing out in the sun, standing out in the heat. I mean, it's not a low impact job. It's a lot of work on a body. The man was on a walker for 2 days. That's fine. But it's kind of like brush your teeth every day. That's fine. 1-2 starts going bad, it's probably not long before the other ones are behind it, even though you brush your teeth every day. I mean, one tire starting to go bare on the car, it's probably not going to be long before the rest of them is going to go bare too. It's just a matter of the human condition, which is you can only do so much for so long. Eventually, your body's going to quit on you. I mean, I would say the same thing basically happened to Mac Brown. He had like a 13-1 season, and next season he went 5-6, and a few years later he was gone. Now I think he's back in North Carolina now, which I don't know what he's doing. But anyway, it's a lot of stress. You can obviously tell he doesn't want to be in those press conferences anymore. Yeah, he's got to run up and down them sidelines constantly. And I don't know how long he's going to be able to do that with a bad hip. Kirby will send Saban into retirement. Maybe. Kind of like how we did, we sent Bear Bryant into retirement. His coaching ability is always going to give every team fits. Now, I will throw a little stat out here for you guys, just so you know. Out of the 120 minutes in the past 2 games that Georgia's played Alabama, we've led for 111 of those minutes. That's a lot of football. So, I mean, Kirby Smart is very good at what he does. Nick Saban's obviously better for now. Nick Saban, it took him a long time to get up to speed. Kirby Smart's up to speed. It's just a matter of time. John said, I put my hand up on your hip when I dip. We dip. That's pretty good. I agree. I think Kirby learned from the greatest of all time. I don't think anybody with any kind of common football sense will sit here and argue that Nick Saban is not one of the most brilliant people when it's come to college football ever, bar none, including Bear Bryant. That's the same as USC Junior putting 600 on us. Kinda. At the end of the day, Alabama won the games. Hats off to those guys. Hats off to the coaching staff. But I honestly believe Georgia's right there. Georgia played both of those games very close. We didn't play one close to get blown out on the other one. We didn't blow them out and then lose the other one. It didn't work like that. I'm with you, man. I can't wait till football season starts. This is agonizing for me. I love talking about college football. Sometimes it's a little difficult to come up with talking points, and thank you so much for you guys jumping in the comment section, because without you guys, it'd just be me standing here at a screen, and I got about 15 minutes of commentary, and then I'm done. Georgia's right there. I mean, I think everybody watch college football knows Georgia's right there. I still think I haven't looked at. So there's been a transition. There's been a transition, right? And the transition used to be is that Georgia was a good team, and then Georgia became an elite team. And I think that Georgia still needs to take about this much more of a step to become one of the very best. He said Georgia's always going to be right there. In a sense, that's true, and in a sense, that's a slight. So, what do you think about Florida and Dan Mullen? Not till we beat them. Yeah. So, I used to watch football games, and I've talked about this with Keith. I would watch football games, and I would be so nervous when that game started. We'd be playing somebody like, we'd be playing somebody like Appalachian State or Samford, and I would be like, is this going to be the game? Is this going to be the game where we completely crap the bed? Is this the one this year? And it was from having Mark Richt for all those years. And then after having Kirby Smart for 3 years, I'm like, man, we don't lose the trash games anymore. We actually win these games. So I could see a difference in the way the teams were playing. And now what I see is that we play these elite teams very closely. Now, do I think we would have beat Clemson last year? Probably not. Man, those guys were just firing on all cylinders in that championship game. They looked prepared. They looked rested. They were fast. Trevor Lawrence is a phenom. It's going to be hard to beat. But I can see now how Georgia's actually in that arena versus before. I was like, yeah, I don't think so. It's like, I love my team, but let's be realistic here. I just didn't see it happen. Florida's probably going to lose 2 to 3 games. Dan Mullen is going to keep talking smack until we shut him up. Appalachian State almost beat Penn State last year. Penn State's got a good defense, too. Yeah, Appalachian State almost snuck up on them. Remember that Georgia Southern game from Rick last year in Athens? You mean the one? What was the score of that game? It was like, I think it ended up being like 41-37. We won it in the last quarter, something like that. Pulling my teeth out. If that's the game I'm thinking about. Winning overtime in that game. By the way, Georgia's never lost to Georgia Southern. Huh. You just hit the like button, Brett. Keep up the good work. Thanks, realistic one. That was a realistic thing for you to do. 23-17, Georgia in overtime. Yeah. Yeah. Now I remember that game. Golly, yeah, because the announcers were talking about how Georgia had never lost to Georgia Southern. I think Clemson, takes a dip this year. That defense is going to be different. Their defense is going to be different. Florida has never beat Georgia Southern. What? John, are you serious? Are you trolling me? Tell me you're trolling me. That's incredible. Well, they also hadn't lost was it Kentucky in 31 years? Oh, they played them one time. Okay. That's kind of like Georgia has a coach that's got an undefeated record. Was it Donovan? I think Coach Donovan picked up, covered for Mark Richt like the last part of the season or whatever. He's undefeated. Says a undefeated coach. There's 20 in the chat and only 9 like. Hit the like button, guys. Thanks, Sarah. There's a ton of stuff that I like to talk about Georgia. In the off season here, we're definitely looking at a lot of things that are still up into the air. We'll know more after the first couple of games, but really disappointing about Hollomon. Really disappointing about the fact he couldn't do what he needed to do, and it probably ended that young man's career for at least a while. Somebody else will pick him up and he'll be fine, but at the end of the day, it does hurt the university. I think that Georgia made a good call. I think they made the right call, especially with the way that the PR thing is going to play out. It sets a precedence for everybody else that comes to Georgia. Let's see, what was that? Let's see, Xavier Thomas, KJ Henry, their defense will still be lights out. Clemson always recruits the D-line. They will, but I think you're going to see a few higher scores against Clemson this year than what you saw traditionally. But I think their offense is still going to overwhelm everybody. Just a Lady says, I really like the realistic commentary. You are one of my faves. Thanks, Just a Lady. I really try to be as objective and honest. Obviously, I'm a fan, but I still try to be as honest as I can. Nichols/Kirby was close. We barely beat Nichols 3 years ago. Now look at us. Yeah, we definitely had a few scares here and there. That 8-5 season seems like a millennia ago. So I think Kirby Smart's getting everything he wants right now, and I think as long as he's able to continue to do that, he's got the right mindset to keep building Georgia into an elite team. Clemson lost one of their star receivers to injury, didn't they? You said you still lost LSU. We lost LSU. We sure did. Shouldn't have lost that game. Jake Fromm had a terrible game that game, and we just couldn't get it turned around. One of the biggest problems was we went into that game with a game plan. Things got a little bit out of hand, and then we started doing stupid stuff. And that really made the game out of reach for us. The best decision we ever made was to fire Mark Richt. Close. The best decision we ever made was to hire Kirby Smart. The second best decision we made was to fire Mark Richt. The third best decision we ever made, hey, what's going on, Keith? The third best decision we ever made was to fire Jim Chaney. Amari Rogers tore his ACL in spring practice in April. Ooh, he's out for a year. But they're stacked at that position, so that shouldn't be a problem for them at all. So, by the way, I know you guys, a lot of you guys are fans of other teams. I really appreciate you guys jumping on. One of the things I wanted to point out, though, is Georgia's the only team in the top 4. I think it's Alabama, Georgia, I think LSU, and Clemson are in the top 4. Clemson, Alabama, I think it's Clemson, Alabama, LSU, Georgia, I think. Georgia's the only team that is in the top 4 that doesn't have 18 or more commits. That new wide receiver they got showed out against Alabama. He did, but that's a rarity. I think you're going to see a lot of adjustments made to kind of stop that sort of stuff in the future. I think Alabama grossly underestimated the arm talent of Trevor Lawrence and the ability of those receivers, and I think it showed. So, if you're looking for an Alabama trash talk video, even Uncle Lou said he's not going to make those anymore until we beat him. So, I will tell you that Kirby is the best at PR. Lose a guy, gain a guy within an hour. I don't think that gaining that 3-star was part of what Kirby did on purpose. I think it just kind of panned out that way. I think they knew for some time that J.J. Hollomon was going to be let go. I think it was just a matter of timing. Yeah, Georgia's going to be fine this year. I don't have any doubt about that. Imagine what would have happened if we'd had Mullen or Herman. Oh, my God, please stop. I don't need that kind of negativity in my life. I really don't. Miami versus Clemson. All right, so let me throw this out there real quick. Hiring Mark Richt was a great decision as well. Hiring him was a great decision. And I've said that before, hiring and firing. Hiring Mark Richt took Georgia from practically being a team like, I don't know, South Carolina or, a Texas A&M or an Oregon team or a Notre Dame team, something like that. Took them from a level that we became a more nationally known brand than we were before. And he kept us at a winning record, he averaged 10 to 11 wins per season. But I think his mentality at the end kind of got the best of him. I think the mentality at the end kind of turned into, well, if you're not, and he actually said this, if we're not competing for national championships everywhere, then it's kind of miserable around here. Well, yeah, it should be. That's what we're paying you millions of dollars for. We want a damn national championship. And I think that's one of the big reasons why Georgia didn't get a championship for years and years, was because Mark Richt couldn't get us there. And I think almost to a point, like he felt like if he could get 10 wins a season, the national championship wasn't a concern for him. At least that's the way I feel. And then I think after he kind of put that out there, and then he had that bad season where everybody was beating the brakes off of us, they just fired him mid-season so they could get Kirby Smart. Georgia, Clemson, Bama, and whoever else will be in the playoffs. He was too much of a nice guy. I think he got soft as he got a little older, I agree. The last time Alabama was in Columbia, South Carolina, they lost to the Gamecocks 35-21. Ouch. I think Steve Spurrier was still there during those days. He used to give Georgia fits, too. But at the end of the day, I think Georgia's going to be just fine. Just giving the other guys some opportunity to step up. George Pickens, Wimbush, just a ton of athletes out there. All right, guys. Well, we're running on about an hour and 10. I typically only go about an hour. Micaiah Tong, yep. So I just really want to appreciate you guys for jumping on. Thanks so much for tuning in. I'm gonna make another video this week. I don't know what it'll be about yet. Probably I'll just go over the games that I'm most looking forward to for this coming up season. kind of getting to a point in a season where there's not that much to talk about unless something crazy happens. But we'll see you guys soon. Thanks so much for tuning in. And as always, God bless.